All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Something definitely a little bit different than you've probably seen on this channel so far, and actually really haven't seen too much in X-Plane in general, and that's helicopters. Right now we're sitting in the Nimbus UH1 Huey, and if you know me personally or you know a little bit about me, you know that I'm actually a Huey fanatic. I love the Huey just as much as, fixed wing 727. So even though I'm an Airbus pilot, I'm going to fly fixed wing. I do have a little bit of background with helicopters, but I have never flown a helicopter of this caliber. And so I don't want you to think that, my opinions and what I think of it are, firm in stone or whatever. These are just my opinions that I've formed. I can look back on a little bit of my experience and what I've been in, but by no means am I a Huey pilot. So I just wanted to clear that air right there. But I do have some time in helicopters, and I really enjoy flying them in the simulator and getting to see all their different quirks. So this is kind of a initial impressions slash review video of the Nimbus UH1. And what we'll do is we'll hop into the cockpit here and we'll just take a look around. And me personally, I'm comparing this helicopter to the UH1 Huey in DCS, or Digital Combat Simulator.
Missile, dust, flare. Oh my
Holy.
god.
I'm turning.
That went right below me because of the flares.
Oh my god. Because up until this point, there hasn't been another Huey simulation out there that I have had any interest in or thought was, worth any time. I fly the DCS UH-1H Huey very frequently. And I actually ended up, that's the reason why I got the VKB flight stick, was to help with more precise control in a helicopter, because flying a helicopter is completely different than flying a fixed wing aircraft. And you noticed on the cyclic here that how long the cyclic actually is from the floor all the way up, and then you have your stick up here. So in the real helicopter, you're only moving the control surface, or I'm sorry, not the control surface, the cyclic. You're only moving the cyclic a very small amount, and you're getting a lot of movement, or all your control is coming from your squash plate up here on your rotor. So a little bit of input goes a long way, especially in a helicopter. So if you have an extended stick that you use, that's definitely a big help than using just a tabletop joystick. Now, you can definitely fly this helicopter with the tabletop joystick. It's just a little bit more difficult, and you might have to play with your settings. So now that I say that, I actually am going to be doing this video with my Warthog stick without the extension, because I currently don't have my VKB mounted properly yet. I'm still working on mounting solutions on my desk here in my sim pit. So, but we're still going to give it a shot, and I wanted you guys to just take a look around. The texturing in this helicopter is pretty phenomenal. It's up there with some of the best add-ons. I think this overhead panel is definitely up there with some of the best in the business. I mean, you can see it's worn out very nicely. Nice wear and tear all over the switches. We can zoom in here to the forward panel, and our gauges are three-dimensional gauges. You could see the glass and the little specks on the glass, and then the needles inside. So you really get that three-dimensional feel when you're looking at these gauges. And here you can see that they are definitely 3D modeled. So very nice texturing work on the cockpit. The center console is very nice. And you can also come into the back here. We'll take a look around. We've got floodlights for the cabin, which work according to the cockpit position switches. I believe you can actually load up guns and fire guns in this as well. I haven't done that yet, but this is just kind of take you around the cabin. And I mean, there's some nice detail. I mean, seat must be in full down position before installing an aircraft. I mean, I love to see that, all these little details. So we know it looks pretty. Let's go ahead and look at the exterior one more time so you guys get a better shot of that. I have no pilots in there or anything right now, so that's why it looks completely empty. It does ship with a couple different skins. We'll take a look at those later. But I mean, a very nice 3D model of this Huey. So really, really enjoying the look of it. Let's go ahead and look at some other features on the inside and get it fired up. So on the left-hand side of your screen here, you'll notice you have a series of buttons. We've got our before starting engine, before landing engine shutdown checklist. All that is here, very nicely laid out. We have a maintenance tracker. So those of you who watch my channel, you know I'm huge on maintenance and wear and tear because I think it is important to have an aircraft that requires you as the flight simmer to treat it properly. And if you fail to treat your aircraft properly, you're going to get repercussions of that. And we lack that in a lot of sim add-ons that come out. This is not one of them. So you can see here, I've got some time on the airplane already. My oil level has started to deplete. My battery started to deplete. I've already screwed up the engine once, so I had to reservice the engine. You can see it's at 100%. Luckily, it doesn't say how many times you've had to repair the engine or whatnot, or else it might have like a 5 or 6 year for me already. But mostly in part because I had some control binding issues. But maintenance panel, I love to see that. The next is this little control input. You see how it's coming on the bottom right-hand corner there? So what this does is it allows us as flight simmers at home to kind of get an idea of where our flight controls are. If you play DCS, Digital Combat Simulator, you're very familiar with this box here. But it kind of gives you an idea of where your controls are in relation to the aircraft position of the controls. So it just makes it a little bit better for situational awareness because you can't necessarily see all the position of the controls when you're flying along. So that's a nice touch. Also helps with hovering. We'll get into that later. Weight and balance. I love to see the weight and balance thing here. Let's go ahead and put in our pilots. We can put in crew chiefs. We can load up the back here. Let's do that. Our CG is still in limits. You could change your cargo. We want the pilots. We don't want them on the inside there. We'll just keep them on the outside. Only passengers. We have pounds, kilograms. I love that. I mean, it's so simple, but you can change between kilograms and pounds. I love that. There's some really high dollar add-ons on the market that don't allow you to change that. And then we can also change our fuel here. We're not going to go very far today, so let's go ahead and defuel the aircraft actually. Let's take 87 gallons or 1 hour of fuel. We'll go ahead and close that up. So we can do our doors and accessories. You can see that I have loaded up the aircraft with people. Let's go ahead and close the cockpit door. We can close the side door there, and you can actually slide this door completely closed if you want. We're going to leave it open for cinematic effect. And I believe you actually have to do it on the opposite side as well, which is really cool. So here we're going to close this door and close the half door, and now we are good to go. We can go ahead and get rid of the doors page. Let's get this puppy fired up. So there's a checklist that you can follow here, and I'm not going to run through this all the way through just because this is not a tutorial video right now. This is just kind of, let's get it up, fire it up, and let's go for a little flight around Orbix, Seattle during the evening hours. So, and in the airplane here, we're going to go ahead and get the battery switch on. The one thing I will say that I'm struggling with a little bit is the click spots on the switches. You can't click, some you can click and drag, and some have different click spots. I just wish that the click spots would be cleaned up a little bit better in this airplane. I do struggle clicking some of the switches. But we've got our battery on. We want our starter generator into start. We want this on and closed. Our non-essential bus is supposed to be normal only. Our inverter is off for now. We'll come over here. We'll turn on our anti-collision lights. We'll turn our position lights into steady. Now, this is one of the switches that I was having issues with earlier. So you have to kind of click away from the switch, but just something to get used to. We're going to put those in steady. You can dim them or leave them in bright. We'll leave them in bright for now. Floodlight is off. And there we go with the switches. You see how some of them are just a little funky. So we'll leave it off for now. Pitot heats are off. And now we can go ahead and get ready to start the airplane. You can see we got our nav lights on and beacon is running, train in the background. Beautiful. So we'll go ahead and introduce the fuel pump. We'll turn the fuel pump on, pressurize the fuel system. Now, in the Huey, the start switch is actually located behind the collective here, and you can't see it as a pilot. So there's actually a click spot you can click here, or you can bind it. I have it bound at this point, so You won't actually see me press anything, but we're going to press and hold the start switch. We're looking for N1 rotation. 40% is when you release the starter according to their manual. I believe it's actually 50%. Maybe I'm getting that from somewhere else, but I release the starter at 50%, and then we'll go ahead and turn the inverter on and get power to the aircraft. We can turn on our force trim and our hydraulics. And here we go for engine start. Let's listen to these sounds. Release the starter. At 15%, you're looking for a rotor rotation. Didn't check that, but we could hear it spinning up. Love the shaking effect, the dust effect. Go ahead and turn the inverter on. There we go with the click spots again. There we go. Inverter on. And we should roll our throttle forward. Alright, so I had a little problem there with my bindings again. So if you're unfamiliar with this Huey and the throttle and collective, this is actually known as the collective right here. This is how we get most of our power. That the throttle is a twist grip here on the side, and you actually have to bind that to your position 1. So on my X56, I actually had to bind it in this position. I couldn't bind it here. I wanted to bind it on this throttle, but I couldn't. I had to make this the collective, and I had to make this throttle too. So if you're having an issue with your throttle, check your bindings and make sure that your primary or your left side of your thrust lever is showing throttle 2. That's your twist throttle, and then your collective for a secondary bind. Alright, so now I can spin up our throttle, and we've got it stabilized at 6,600 RPM. So we bring the throttle into full, and we have 6,600 RPM and stabilized. Let's go ahead and get some of this nice cockpit lighting on here so you can see the cockpit lighting is very, very well done as well. Alright, so now that we have our throttle set at 6,600 RPM, we are ready to go. We'll extend our landing light. Again with the key bindings here. There we go. And this is the searchlight. I guess we'll keep that stowed for now. Alright, we are completely spooled up now and ready to go. I'm not going to get into helicopter flying dynamics or anything like that right now, but hopefully we can have a semi-smooth takeoff here. We're going to anticipate with left anti-torque pedal. Now what I need to do is, if you see that if you look at my control indicator, you see how quick that snaps over? So I'm actually going to add a little bit of curve. This is one of those airplanes where you would really benefit if you have quality pedals. So I'm going to go ahead and change that curve. A little bit smoother. Alright. So let's go ahead and do our left pedal in there. We're going to do slightly back left on the stick. And let's try to get a nice smooth takeoff here. Helicopter lifts off the ground. And we are getting out of here. Take off here at a Boeing field in Seattle. You'll notice all the 737 MAXs off the right-hand side of the aircraft. We'll go ahead and push the cyclic forward, get into that translational lift. Now the aircraft is flying away from the ground, almost like a conventional airplane, once you get past that translational lift. Watching our RPM, watching our EGT, making sure everything is in the green, we're not exceeding any limits. We'll go ahead and climb away from Boeing Field and go visit downtown. Right now, there should be a way to use force trim, and in the Huey, there actually is a force trim button where you press the trimmer and you can now recenter the stick at that location, or depending on what, how the game has it modeled, sometimes it's like a center position trim. In the real aircraft, I believe once you press the force trim switch, you lock the aircraft in at that current cyclic position, and then you adjust from that position unless you do the trimmer reset, which then brings everything back to zero. We're reaching our VNE at 124 knots there, so we'll back it off a little bit. Let's go ahead and climb up, go visit downtown Seattle. Really love the sounds. They are a little bit heavy on the bass for me, but still pretty good. We can see our passengers in the back there. Climbing out 100 knots, 500 feet per minute. Not too terrible. Our EGTs are just below the yellow limit there. I believe there's a timer. So once you reach the yellow limit, you can remain in that position for a few minutes, and then you have to get it back down to the green arc. I'll have to refresh my Huey knowledge. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at downtown Seattle. That's the stadium where the Seahawks play, home of the 12th man, CenturyLink Field. There's the Ferris wheel down there in the harbor. Now, one thing that's pretty cool about this airplane, let's go ahead and show you. There is a co-pilot. We can hand over control, and I believe we'll be hands-free now. So the co-pilot has control of the aircraft. There is no autopilot in the Huey, but they kind of make up for that for you by giving you that co-pilot there where you can hand over control. Let's go take a look at the Space Needle. So I believe to take back control, we just come here and we go take control. And that was a little aggressive there, but all right. We have control of the aircraft now. Let's go take a look at the Space Needle and see if we can put it down inside of CenturyLink Field. Let's see if I believe it's an open stadium. I'm pretty sure it is. Quite positive it is. Now, I really would like to know where the force trim button is in this aircraft. I looked in the settings menu and they only had a few options for the engine start as well as the guns, fire guns. So I actually stayed at a hotel right down here on this road. Not too far from the Ferris wheel. Alright, so when landing a helicopter, any helicopter, but especially the Huey, you gotta be very careful you don't enter a phase of flight that's called Vortex Ring State, or VRS. essentially what happens in VRS, the helicopter is going to enter its own downwash, its own rotor wash, and as you increase power, you only make the situation worse and increase your sink rate. So there's several techniques to get out of VRS. Maybe we can talk about those in a different video. But if you are trying to land the helicopter and you notice you keep crashing, be very mindful of your descent rate and your feet per minute. Try to keep them below 300 feet per minute, maybe even 250 as you make your final descent. Alright, as we come around here to the field, let's go ahead and get the aircraft out of its forward flight phase and try to establish a hover and bring it into CenturyLink field. I'm going to orbit one more time here. We're going to come in opposite of the scoreboard, so we're going to right around the left-hand side here. We're going to bleed off that speed, trade it for altitude, and enter a hover. Well, we'll be very careful here that our rotors can clear both sides. That looks very close. Watch our rate of descent here as we set it down inside the stadium. So that descent rate there was in excess of 500 feet per minute. Nice and stable. Alright, and we are down. Let's go ahead and take a look at that replay. So there you have it, guys. It's the Nimbus UH1, and I'm actually really enjoying this aircraft quite a bit. Let's take a look at this there. We did clear the, I think we did clear that. A little unstable there. You can definitely tell I need work on my helicopter flying skills. Got a little bit close here. Good thing this really isn't collidable, or we may have, no, it looks like we cleared it. Just barely. I probably should have entered from over on this side. Definitely wiggling around on the rudder pedals there. So, you can see that I'm really working that, they're really not rudders in a helicopter, they're anti-torque pedals. But you can really see that I'm working them, I'm dancing on them. You're really going to be active on your feet when you're flying any helicopter. And like I said, if you have a quality pedal set, it really is going to help you with controlling the aircraft. So not a bad hover there, just a little bit choppy, a little bit wonky. I think that's part flight dynamics, part X-plane, part me not being very good. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we can get out of the stadium now. Watch the roof there. My takeoff was definitely a little bit slippery. Alright, begin to push forward on the cyclic. Get the aircraft moving in forward phase of flight. Get through that translational lift period. Until she begins flying like an airplane. I use that term a light when flying like an airplane. There's a look at the port. Seattle in the background. Well, you can see that was clearly terrible. Definitely going to need to practice that. And that's partially me being terrible and struggling with my joystick position. Mostly me being terrible. Alright, so there's the numbers there. What we'll do now is we'll hover taxi off. I believe hover taxi is restricted to like 10 feet or 5 feet off the ground, so I already blew through that. But I'm also going way too fast. We'll make our next left here. What do you know? There's a beautiful 727. Let's set it down right next to our 727 cargo jet. Alright, we are down. Let's go ahead and reduce our throttle. We'll see the RPM will fall off. We get our low RPM warning. Silence it. Once we are down there, I believe we can press this little locking mechanism and that will actually cut off fuel. Shut off our main fuel, we can get rid of our trim. Inverters come off. I should have moved our starter generator to standby generator after takeoff, I apologize, or after engine start. And I believe there's a rotor brake in this Huey. Right there. There's your rotor brake that will stop your rotors from spinning. Perfect. Let's go ahead and open it up. Alright guys, so that's going to pretty much wrap it up there for our short little first impressions video of the Nimbus Huey. Definitely not a tutorial by any means, and I know I am far from a very good helicopter pilot, but I hope you guys, if you were on the fence about checking out this aircraft, if you're really passionate about airplanes and helicopters, I really think that this is a step in the right direction, especially with the version 1 release being this quality already. I can only anticipate and expect some little fixes here and there and tweaks, but I mean, it is pretty much bug-free, out of the box, fully simulated, which is rare these days. In the world of flight sim beta and all that stuff, this aircraft is ready to fly bug-free out of the box. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you on the next one.